A lot happening in the exchange space right now. Huobi, along with many others, are starting to show some signs of trouble. Now, some of you might look at that and say, hey, Paul, don't worry about it. It's not the United States. But the reality is we have a large audience around the world. And I think a lot of these exchanges now are starting to play into more of the psyche around crypto investing as a whole. So we're going to dive into all that good stuff today. And I think there's some good stuff in here that will really help you guys get to a point that might make it one of those in out, especially around self-custody. So we'll dive into all that. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Thanking our sponsor today, and speaking of self-custody, is Trezor, one of the best devices out there for holding your Bitcoin. It's a safe place for your coins, so make sure and take a look at the hardware devices. There's a couple that they offer, so I think pretty much one for anyone. The Trezor Model 1, which is fairly inexpensive, $69. And then you go over here to the Model T if you like the LCD screen, which is the one I like. Really great product. They have a great software suite as well to plug into this. Really one of those that I think if you're looking at self-custody, and you should be if you've been following our show, hopefully you are, this is one of the devices that I would recommend. Just click the link below. It does help the channel out. Let's get into a couple of points here on what exchange might be, and in general, the market, what kind of things are really causing the potential of where the market might go to over the next few weeks. Now, I know Bitcoin right now is actually starting to pump a bit. We may see it hit the 17 mark here, maybe even during the show. But crypto giant DCG shuts down their HQ subsidiary. Again, we know enough about what's going on with DCG. This is not a good look for DCG in general and where Genesis is flowing into this, but they announced that it's shutting down its operations in the wealth management division due to the state of broader economic environment. Yeah, okay. I would agree this is kind of normal operating procedure, but it is worth noting that the news of the shutdown comes on the same day that Genesis announced the massive layoff itself. So this is definitely a concerted and in concert effort around what DCG is trying to do to do some damage control. And I think based on just some of the things that have been happening within the space, this was a thread on Twitter, and we'll get into a little bit of Cameron Winklevoss's letter, because this is really what all this is about when it comes to DCG. But a lot of this is really boiling down to this whole January 8th deadline, which is really going to start to line up where this might play into how DCG performs. And if you look at more and more information, potentially this could get into a representation of solvency, further into what Ram was talking about. I'll show you a clip here in a minute. There's misrepresentation as an indicia of the accounting fraud potentially that could play into this. And then you get into kind of this whole aspect of whether or not there are interesting things happening. I won't say anything beyond that. I'll let the clips speak for themselves, because it does get into some, I don't know, if I were seeing this thing done in normal business activities outside of crypto, people would really be looking at this as a shady mechanism for sure. Listen to what Lorshan and Ram had to say about this. He's the CEO over at Lomita. Let me play this clip.
What were the main points of this letter, and what do you think its significance was?
So overall, the picture for DCG is looking increasingly grim, and we'll get into that. It's a really unfortunate state of play for DCG, Gemini Earn, and GBTC holders. The open letter that Cameron Winklevoss posted on Twitter has a few notable highlights. I will call out two sentences in particular. One, he calls Barry's behavior as not only unacceptable, quote, but also unconscionable. That's one. The second, this is a key sentence, he says, you, referring to Barry, you took this money, the money of school teachers, to, quote, fuel greedy share buybacks, illiquid venture investments, and kamikaze grayscale NAV trades that ballooned the fee-generating AUM of your trust, all at the expense of creditors and all for your own personal gain. Now, those are obviously fighting words. What Cameron is doing is he's coming right up to the line of accusation of impropriety behavior without crossing the line. What Cameron has done with that second sentence has put Barry into the same class of actors as Celsius and BlockFi. BlockFi, of course, has an SEC enforcement action. Their bank.
All right, so you can kind of see there's a heated exchange, obviously, with the letter from the Winklevoss twins and where Barry Silbert, the CEO of DCG, are playing this out. And this may be in a bad position for DCG. This is one of the things, and we've talked about this a couple of times on the show, is that, you know, when you look at black swan events, gray swan events that could still cause enough pain in the market to pull us back down to, say, in the 10K range, or, you know, we've been looking at the 14K window for quite some time. This is pretty much it. Now, you add this along with what's happening on the exchange front, and you have some very interesting things going on right now. Now, I know, yes, we're starting to see a little bit of run on a handful of altcoins, obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum both also, and we'll take a look at those before we jump in. If you guys do want to see some sentiment today on this, just smash the like button and let me know. That'll help me at least understand kind of the direction you guys are looking at. This was Cameron Winklevoss's letter. I won't go into the detail because I think Ram did a good job of explaining some of the key points that really got into it. But you've got Barry Silbert, of course, responding to it. And this is where it goes back and forth on Twitter. And to me, this is the greatest thing for news reporting. It's the greatest thing for if you're following these markets, is because this kind of stuff, guys, right here in traditional business has never happened. You never see CEOs going at each other in public forums at this level. And the reason is because all of this is open. It's open information because of the blockchain, and it starts to paint pictures as we see these kind of scenarios playing out. So yeah, it gets pretty significant here. It's just right here is what Cameron talked about. Let me zoom up on that. So how does DCG owe Genesis almost 1.7 billion if it didn't borrow the money? Oh, right, that's a promissory note. So again, getting into kind of these little nuances within running a business. Whether or not DCG gets out of this clean is a big question, and I think most of the analysts so far looking at this are kind of pointing at the potential here that we are in for a very, very rough ride with what could happen around DCG and all of its entities that are pertaining. Obviously, we've seen the layoffs start to occur. Just a quick note on Gemini. Everybody asks about Gemini all the time. So one thing they do and are doing is these updates on this particular page. So if you just go to Gemini.com Earn, you can kind of get these updates. There was the last one, which was Tuesday. That's the open letter there. But there's one dropping today. I haven't seen it yet, but it says Tuesday and Friday of each week until a resolution has been reached. So again, these guys are staying on it. They're kind of holding the feet to the fire here for Silbert and DCG, so this is going to get interesting. If DCG were to go away, how big of an issue do you think this would play into crypto in general? Does this set it back, multiple years? Is this something that is just another cog in the wheel that is already kind of in a position that needs to go away? I'd love to get your feedback on how and what you think the importance level is around DCG. Now, some positive news is if you look at, and we've talked about this, we had Sue on from Hut 8 on earlier this week, and we were talking about kind of the significance of some of the miners that were really in diamond hands position, and here was Bitcoin miner Marathon closing 2022 with 103 million in cash, and they were also paying down debt. So this is good, and they were Marathon was one of the miners in general that were in that diamond hands state. And go back and check that video with Sue on Hut 8. We did a whole piece on it because we broke down a lot of the competition in the mining, because this is still, to me, one of the key areas that has to be solid for Bitcoin to maintain its resiliency above 10K, and that is the big window that everybody's looking at right now. Now, you've got a lot of other things happening in the market. You've got Nexo now kind of going back and forth with the Vault CEO. saying it doesn't have the best interest of creditors in mind. So there's some negative implications around a lot of these players. Remember, Nexo is one of the loan platforms that was very similar to Celsius, ceased operations here in the United States, and is still operating, abroad. This again goes back into the issue as to whether or not these kind of operations are going to cause possibly another, contagion effect to occur. And they talk about Evalda's committee. They had creditors that had rejected the final takeover proposal from Nexo because of the concerns about its financial health and other issues. Nexo responded saying that Evalda's COO basically says, hey, you don't have the best interest of its creditors in mind. He kind of pounded back, and you just see this kind of stuff. To me, this is the indicator that a problem is afoot. And typically, you get better responses from CEOs that are, one, they understand the situation's brevity, the seriousness of it, and they also understand how to manage that. And that's something that I've seen here in the crypto space more so than I have in many other business entities. And I've been around, the business world for a long time in big markets, one much larger than crypto. And maybe that's the reason, is because those kind of CEOs, they just don't go into these kind of scenarios. So it's very interesting to watch this playing out. Further into this, you've got crypto exchange Huobi now laying off 20% of its staff. This is another big hit. Obviously, Coinbase, Crypto.com, pretty much everyone has had layoffs over the past year. At the face value, probably not super worried if you were just looking at the face value. But if you dig in a little deeper and kind of look at what they're saying here, this is the Justin Sun, who told the Chinese news outlet that, hey, this was nothing to be really worried about. It was reported last week by that's Colin Wu that staff salaries were being paid in stable coins such as USDT and DC. And this provoked the widespread outcry from employees. And then we get into this kind of scenario, again, all around Huobi. So I think when you look at that, along with just in general what's happening with Huobi, and again, the size of this exchange, one of the world's largest, around 360 million in 24-hour volume, about 12.5 million visits out there. But in general, I think this is, they're not necessarily out of the range of what's happening with the rest of crypto right now. So this is a normal, everyday procedure. Listen, this happens again in a lot of different industries for sure. Past 24 hours, significant increase in net outflows. This is the thing that starts getting it a little bit more worrisome, even though, okay, let's go lay some people off. Okay, sure, those adjusted, but you need a marketing and PR plan to deal with this. Again, this goes back to the inexperience, I think, of a lot of these kind of operations. But right here, 60.9 million of the 94 million net outflow in the past week occurred in the past day. So this is big. Look at these numbers right here. I'm going to zoom in on that. Multi-chain net flows 24, minus 60, minus 94 over the 7-day. Not good. Not a good look overall. Then you look at the size of this. Obviously, Binance dominating the space. We've talked about this before. Not really a healthy situation. OKX. Then you got Coinbase jumping in right there, and then FTX and Huobi. FTX gone. Huobi, if you combine these two right here, all of a sudden you have an entity that is number 2 in the overall exchange space, above OKX and well above Coinbase. These are the kind of things that do start problems, because this gets more into a global contagion versus what might happen here in the United States. These are the kind of things that do worry me as they play out. Here's Justin Sun saying, hey, listen, we believe the key to success of the world of cryptocurrencies is just ignore the FUD and keep building. Okay, I agree with that to a certain extent, but his actions speak differently. And this is the different speaking, and that's a wallet associated with Justin Sun moved 100 million over to Huobi. So again, getting into a liquidity crisis potentially that could play into this. Why is this happening? This is not normal everyday business activities. So you can't fall back on that in this kind of situation. If you look at some other things right here, you've got Tron, which is literally just depegged, moving off, and I'll show you a chart on Tron here in a second. But you can kind of see just the movement here over this past little bit. Here's the chart on Tron on the 1 month, and you can see quickly how it's moving off its baseline. So again, not good lineups, not good positions when you look at now the more global effect. And whether or not you guys are working with decentralized exchanges or with centralized exchanges, I'm just kind of wondering, are you moving a lot more into the DEX space, or are you strictly looking at self-custody and moving completely off centralized exchanges? Maybe that's why we're seeing so many of these outflows right here. Here's Huobi Blockchain talking about cryptocurrency. Gate, that could be also in the wind, in the wings of dealing with this as well. Started layoffs. Again, this is employees saying that it's 50% of the compensation now. Some employees have already begun to withdraw their permissions. Gate responded, this is kind of normal optimization. I don't think so. Again, these are times of economic pressure and or liquidity. That's the only thing that really can play out into this. Now, the question that we have here on the show is, should you bail these guys out? Are there entities out there that might say, hey, you look at what Justin Sun's trying to do with Huobi. You look at many players that have tried to do that with FTX. And then you have projects that are now opening up, much like what Binance did when they first looked at FTX. I still don't know if that was real or not, but point is that you get these massive holes in these balance sheets because of this nefarious accounting and the lack of consistency and just traditional business acumen, policies, procedures, processes that are in any business out there, but it feels as though it doesn't apply to some of these centralized exchanges. So very interesting for sure. It makes me appreciate watching. I watched the Coinbase documentary last night. It's on Amazon. It's called Coin. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 3 stars, but there was many reasons why. It was more of a story more around Armstrong and his co-founder Fred. But the interesting thing is that Coinbase may be in a very interesting place to where they could pick up some of the pieces here, not only in the US, but globally, if we continue to see these kind of fallouts. Now, question mark is, you got CZ still coming in and saying, wait a minute, we're going to kind of look at possibly doing a recovery initiative. Now, I look at this and I just don't understand why. Because it's not an investment fund. And he understands, and this is kind of interesting, we recognize that traditional finance institutions may want to participate but can't because they don't want to send money in the fashion in which these kinds of entities would like to go. And they anticipate that this initiative will last about 6 months. That's not enough time. So to me, Binance committing $1 billion seems very low. But to me, yeah, this is good. But again, is this just virtue signaling by CZ and in general waiting for kind of the rest of the industry to burn? Because I just don't see this as really being a significant real plan of going forward if it was in truly part an industry bailout fund. Because you're not going to be dealing with this in any government entity. There's no banks coming into this. This is pretty much on our own in the crypto space. So this is something that we're watching very closely and continue to take a look at how this starts to affect Bitcoin overall. If you take a look quickly at Bitcoin, sliding up, yep, there it is. Just hit 17K. Looks like it's on a pretty sharp upswing right now. Man, I need to go over and see if a trade executed real quick. But that's not a bad little move right now here on a Friday afternoon. So good for Bitcoin. Let's take a look at Ethereum real quick. Also stepping up as well. Do you guys feel like this is going to flow into the FOMC week? Because I feel like this is, with the jobs report, a little bit of the soft CPI, I feel like we're going to get a little bit of a push and then a retrace after FOMC coming up later in the month. Many people have talked about 18K possibly being reclaimed. Love to get your feedback on whether or not you think it would be the case. Let's go over to the poll real quick and see what we have. All right, so yes, let's take a look. Should troubled crypto exchanges be bailed out by other companies? Yes or no? Well, you guys are in the same boat I am. Absolutely not. It's just, the market is going to work itself through this. Granted, it's not like the traditional banking industries that get bailouts like this all the time. But the reality is, we are in a different world, in a different structure, and also in a different place in the finance architecture that's being built for the next generations. And I think these are the risk-taking zones that we have to be in. And just, I think anybody playing in that have to realize that you're literally operating without a net. All right, let's get to a few questions. Be Sovereign says, why would you ever bail out of failure? Absolutely. Well, I mean, this happens all the time in the banking industry. Failures get bailed out all the time. Jerry says, Boster says, I use Robinhood, owned by 11 banks. Listen, Robinhood's an interesting exchange. They're publicly traded. Again, back to kind of what Coinbase has done. Remember, Coinbase had a nice little pop after that New York adjustment that played into it. So I'm just playing more and more into Coinbase. And I've not been a Coinbase fan. If you have to go make a trade, where would you do it today? Where would you do it today? Would you go to Gemini still right now? Would you take a pitch over to, say, KuCoin or Kraken? Would you jump into Pionex US? I'm kind of curious where you guys were, or would you drop into Binance? Jerry saying Binance really solid. Question mark. A lot of people still question whether or not Binance is truly fully liquid. Harry Newt, what's the real volume? Can you trust the numbers? Most likely not, Harry. I think that's going to be a problem. Which is the best CEO in crypto? I think we're going to find out this year. In 2023, the winner will reveal themselves as one of the best CEOs out there. And it's going to be the one who maintains and gets in a position for regulatory guidance, alignment from growth, and the ability to keep solvency at its maximum. They do those three things, big one. All right, let's take a look here. We got a guy saying, let's take a look at his portfolio. Can you review my portfolio? Bitcoin Matic Engine, OMG, Stacks, okay, STX, and OMI. I don't give financial advice. I'll tell you what of that you have in the list is in my portfolio. And that is Matic Bitcoin. Bitcoin number 1 for me, Matic number 2. Obviously, I do own ETH. Engine I don't own right now. OMG, none. OMI I own. So that's just me. Don't know if that helps you guys out. Let's go here. Twins, here's a good one. Cool Veeps are saying twins are pretending to be good guys when they are the ones who decided to put user funds in Genesis. Good touche. This is true. These are some of those kind of things that everybody, it's the misdirection, boys. It's the misdirection. You got to watch out for it, for sure. I guess I'm not getting my coins back from Gemini. Well, if you're in the Earn program right now, it's not looking well, especially with what's happening with DCG in general. Paul, the King of FUD, is online. Yay, baby! Listen, I just support the news. That's all. Bitcoin is capitalism. If you're on capital, you go bust. If not, get a bailout. I don't know. I'm in the camp of this. Is that when you look at where Bitcoin is today and the potential for it, DCG could present a bit of a fly in the ointment for Bitcoin. We could see some pretty significant downturns because of that. And we may see this completely resolve itself as well. So there's a possibility here. It'll be interesting because I think there's some players that are coming into the game right now. And if you look at our coverage on CES, I look at all these major companies that are investing so much into the NFT space, so much into Web3. Listen, they know where this is going. And when you have that kind of thing happening, you have that kind of situations occurring with billion, close to $1 trillion brands, the next step is moving. We're over here playing in a very small field, scrapping it out when the reality is the bigger markets are starting to move in a very interesting way. So keep your eye on things outside the market because this all does affect crypto. And if it affects crypto, it will affect Bitcoin and vice versa. It's all about investment trajectory in terms of adoption. Because listen, if someone adopts and gets into, say, an NFT or a digital collectible or a game, whatever it might be, whatever their their gateway drug is. What's the next thing they're going to find out about? They're going to figure out about an altcoin because they got to go buy one to get something on there. They got to go get some Matic or some ETH. What's the next thing they do? They go buy Bitcoin. They go buy Bitcoin. They stick it into a self-custody. Follow the rabbits, guys. Follow the rabbits. All right, we're going to get out of here. If you guys have any questions, drop them in the comments below. We try to read as many of those as we can. And if you want to reach me, it's easy. It's out on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.